Hello, Nashville. I am Bo Beach, commercial real estate broker and host of the Free Speech podcast. I've got 5 different stories worthy of your attention today. As always, they will be presented in an authentic, no nonsense style. We are going to start with a heavy topic, and that topic is I don't think the average person really understands how close we are to some form of a civil war in this country. And I'm going to present the thoughts of Ray Dalio, an intellectual, an author, and a respected money manager who breaks this down in an article for Time Magazine and does so in a intellectual and nonpartisan way. So I'm going to break that down for you. So if you haven't thought a whole lot about what it would look like for some form of civil war to pop off in this country, we're going to talk it through. Then we're going to talk through the newest user of commercial real estate in the Nashville area, Pickleball, and whether or not that concept really has longevity or if it's truly just a fad. Next, we're going to give you an update on the mega project in East Nashville on the Lincoln Tech site. That assemblage keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm going to update you on that and what they have planned there. Then I'm going to walk you through another recent deal, which I'm calling the Strip Club Flip, a property that was purchased in 2022, was then divided into, and then is now in the process of being resold. I'm going to walk you through that to kind of give you a glimpse behind the scenes of how some of these commercial real estate transactions really play out, especially in the changing marketplace. So a lot of these sites that were scheduled to have large new developments on them are having a really difficult time getting financing. And some of those sites are now being resold. And I'm going to tell you that story. And lastly, there is a new restaurant coming to the JW Marriott Hotel. I'll tell you about that. But more so, I want to kind of walk you through the economics of a restaurant build out. You are going to be shocked how much it costs to open a restaurant today. If you thought the restaurant business was already impossible, wait till you hear what your upfront costs are on the build out of a restaurant in Nashville. I'm going to tell you that story. So let's start with politics. As we find ourselves on the cusp of a civil war in this country, a lot of people have their blinders on. A lot of people are not seeing the dangers that lie ahead. I would suggest you start thinking about it, preparing yourself if things go sideways so you're ready and able to protect your family. Now, this is coming from Ray Dalio of Bridgewater Associates. He's become an intellectual late in life, kind of a historian, right? So let me read you some of his words. Based on my study of history, America is approaching the point in the big cycle of internal order in politics where people should be prepared for the arrival of increased conflict, potentially even some form of civil war. Now, a lot has changed in the last month as a result of the debate. Number one, the debate undermined the people's trust in President Biden's capabilities and the forthrightness and capabilities of the Democrat Party. Number two, the assassination attempt brought the country a quarter of an inch away from some type of civil war. Chaos would have occurred because of anger and violence being in the air at the same time. Trump appeared a strong fighter to almost everyone. The contrast with the frail President Joe Biden was absolutely striking. And number three, the Republican convention conveyed a picture of a united, strong, and thoughtful, common man's nationalistic and fundamentalistic party. He goes on. These developments reduced the odds of a close and contested Trump loss scenario, which is the highest risk scenario for some type of civil war. Did you catch that? the highest risk scenario for some type of civil war in this country is if Trump loses by a small margin, and shifted in favor of a big Republican Trump win, followed by a dominant and controlling Republican Trump government. The Democrats denying Donald Trump the presidency would be to many Republicans akin to Democrats preventing the second coming of Christ. This is coming from a man that is not religious, is presenting this in the context of the historical record in our country. The bigger picture is that we can be confident that the country will remain deeply divided by irreconcilable differences. And the biggest question that will remain until after the election is whether the domestic order in which election results and the tripartite constitutional system of rules will be respected in the face of seemingly irreconcilable differences. By the way, the markets are already increasingly reflecting this shift, this risk of a civil war breaking out. He also goes on, it's not the ideal, it's the ideology, not the person that matters. Votes will be more for or against those ideologies. Excuse me, y'all, it's early. I can't talk today. Forgive me. It is clear that the urban liberal globalists are lining up against the rural conservative God-fearing nationalists. Wow. What a way to describe the two teams. Urban liberal globalists against the rural conservative God-fearing nationalists. Wow. The election battle will be between the definitively hard right and some vaguely defined left. So Ray Dalio sees what the Republicans are presenting as a hard right position, which I'm not sure I see it exactly that way, but nevertheless, and some vaguely defined left, right? The left doesn't really make clear what they stand for. You know, it's pretty clear to me that Kamala Harris is a worse candidate than Joe Biden. It's pretty clear to me that Kamala Harris is further to the left of Joe Biden. It's pretty clear to me, even though Joe Biden is not an impressive person, he's more impressive than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has accomplished virtually nothing in her career, but has somehow worked up the ranks. What they both have in common is they are not good at governing, but they are good at politics, right? So politics is a skill that is different than the skill of actually governing for the people and making people's lives better. Neither Kamala or Biden are good at governing, but both of them are very astute at winning elections. They are good at politics. So what a crazy place to be in this country, on the cusp of a civil war, you know, and we throw that term around, civil war. That could mean a lot of different things, right? That doesn't mean to have that we divide up and our armies meet each other on a battlefield, right? But it is a scary proposition. And I do think that this election is the most important election in my 42 years of life. I do believe that Joe Biden was the worst president in my 42 years of life. I do think the last 3.5 years have been an absolute clown show. And anybody that says that Joe Biden's presidency was a success and somehow should be honored is a person that I will not trust or take seriously. You know, the American public has been gaslighted for 3.5 years. And I think even the dumbest amongst us are kind of coming to the realization that they've been played. And maybe these utopian ideas being presented by the left in reality actually make life worse. In reality, they make everything more expensive. In reality, they make everything harder if you're a small business owner. In reality, the government spending, as they continued to spend when it was clear that inflation was raging, and they continue to spend and spend and spend because that's all the Democrat Party can do. Their only agenda is to spend more money that we don't have. So if they didn't have the opportunity to spend more and more money, they wouldn't have anything in their mind uh, to run on, right? They would have no accomplishments, right? Because everything that they've done that they consider an accomplishment is actually just spending money we don't have. So they chose themselves, they chose power, they chose uh, to play the game to win the next election rather than to actually make life better in this country. I think what we've seen from the onset of COVID till today, I think most people have really lost faith in the competency of the federal government. And I am one of these people that thinks we need to get a Republican into that White House. We need to get a Republican controlled House and Senate, and we need to chop all the federal bureaucracy by 80%. Some of these agencies are not savable and they need to go. But the agencies that we do think are necessary, we need to trim the fat all the way down to 20% of what was there before. And then if it needs to be grown from there, we'll grow it the right way. We've been increasing bureaucracy. It's been snowballing since the 1930s. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal added all of these different government agencies, and they've just continued to snowball and snowball in terms of size, cost, and regulation. At some point, one needs to reevaluate our federal government, its cost, and its purpose. And that time is 2025. And I agree, if somehow the Democrats, after their massive failure over the last 3.5 years, after the quality of life of the average person has gone down so dramatically in this country, if they find a way to beat Donald Trump, there will be a civil war. There will be unrest. Not only will there be fighting, but there's going to be talk of succession. Texas will go first. As soon as Texas opens that conversation, many of the other red states in the Southeast are going to follow, and it is going to get gnarly. And I personally think it would not be the worst thing in the world to get off of the sinking ship, which is the United States of America, to carve out our own conservative union of states separate from the United States. Get out from under all of the debt, get out from under all of the regulation, get out from under all of the unfunded liabilities, start with a fresh slate, have the capital being in Texas with its own stock market. It's really doable. And I think it can be done without the military. I think it can be done by negotiation with the stroke of a pen. If Donald Trump does not win the presidency, you are going to hear states talk of seceding from a union that no longer serves them. And that might not be the worst thing that's ever happened. Let's keep moving. Let's get on to some commercial real estate deals. Pickleball, the game that everybody plays when they can't play a real sport any longer. And I say that jokingly because I'm a 42-year-old basketball player, and I've seen over the years many of the guys that I play with slowly fade out, ask them what they've been up to. Why aren't they playing? Oh, no, I'm just playing pickleball, right? It's the ultimate old person sport. Not a lot of running, not a lot of jumping. Don't have to have a lot of lateral movement. It's like a big game of ping pong. It's a little bit different. It is a game that's not that easy. If you're playing someone that knows what they're doing and knows the strategy of the game, it's hard, even if you're just an athletic, talented person, to step in and beat them. So there is some skill to it. There's no doubt about that. A large-scale pickleball facility is slated to open this fall in the South Nashville building, once home to the Nashville Athletic Club. This facility will offer 14 pickleball courts, restrooms, a community room, a retail shop, and offices. It will be located on the 2.94-acre site at 5035 Harding Place. This is a franchise known as Pickleball Kingdom. There will also be locations in Hendersonville and Murfreesboro, which will open this fall, in addition to a location planned in Mount Juliet. A permit for the build-out at 5035 Harding Place is valued at $900,000. Pickleball Kingdom Nashville South will join Paddle House Nashville, which is slated to open this summer in the building that most recently accommodated Nashville Furniture Warehouse. The address of that property is 502 West Thompson Lane. So obviously, pickleball is having a moment, right? If you are the owner of a piece of commercial real estate and you're looking for a tenant, I'm not sure I want to bet the house on pickleball being successful. I understand that pickleball is fun. I understand that pickleball has demand. I think most of that demand happens nights and weekends, right? Because most people are at work, right? So most of the demand is all happening nights and weekends. So how much money can you really make renting pickleball courts or selling memberships to access 14 pickleball courts where everybody wants to use them at the same time on nights and weekends? In Williamson County, for example, where I live, there is a great shortage of court space, right? There's a shortage of soccer fields, there's a shortage of baseball fields, there's a shortage of everything related to sports. And the challenge is everyone wants to use it at the same time, right? Everybody wants to use it nights and weekends, and there's just not enough to go around. That's the reason most of these sports businesses, don't make it. It's hard to make enough money to cover all of your expenses in those small windows of opportunity. So, as an athlete myself, as a guy that coaches basketball, is very involved in a lot of other sports, I've thought long and hard about potentially opening a sports complex because there's clearly a need for it. Once you dig a little deeper, into those concepts, you realize the economics of those businesses are very, very difficult and very risky. So it'll be interesting to see if these pickleball facilities can actually make it to the extent that they can continue to pay their landlord and continue to stay in the space, especially when they're paying $900,000 in addition to all of the rent that's required, in addition to the equipment, in addition to all of the payroll expenses, the marketing expenses. You've got a whole lot of money going out. I'm not sure 14 pickleball courts are going to generate enough money to cover all of that money going out. That being said, I wish them well. I hope it works. I think anything that gets people, especially older people, moving and exercising and using their bodies is a great thing. I think anybody that can take space and fill vacant commercial space is good for the community, good for society as a whole. So I'm rooting them on. I'm just a little bit concerned about the economics of this type of user. So we'll continue to follow this. Let's keep moving. Next, an update on the Lincoln Tech site in East Nashville. So this is one of the biggest development projects in East Nashville, right? Nashville's Southern Land Company, a very reputable group, has paid $2.5 million for a small building located adjacent to its East Nashville site, home to Lincoln College of Technology, which is slated for a major development. Get this, the seller of that $2.5 million property paid $36,000 for the 0.21 acre property in 2014. So Southern Land Company paid $2.5 million for 1/5 of an acre. That same 1/5 of an acre in 2014, 10 years ago, sold for $36,000. The deal follows Southern Land Companies having paid in March $4.05 million for a commercial building near the same development. That transaction came after a September 2023 purchase for $1.9 million for a 2-parcel property. Of course, that deal follows the original transaction, Southern Land having paid $33.75 million in June for the 20-parcel property home to Lincoln College of Technology, which is equivalent to about 15 acres. So they spent $33.75 million, then they spent $1.9 million, then they spent $4 million, and then they spent $2.5 million more, assembling even more. They decided that 15 acres wasn't enough. They are going to continue to assemble adjacent properties. And why are they doing that? They are planning 800 multifamily homes, apartments, and what they're calling live-work residences. The project will also include 150 single-family homes, cottages, and townhomes, and approximately 300,000 square feet of commercial space. So this is a big deal for East Nashville. This deal is going to change that submarket, right? When it ultimately gets done. That is a ton of housing. We're talking about almost 1,000 new homes added to East Nashville, plus 300,000 square feet of commercial space. So when you're creating that kind of density, I guess it pencils out to acquire a 1/5 acre parcel of land and pay $2.5 million for it when you've already got over 15 acres assembled. So that's that story. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be a very, very cool project. That's going to be a very big deal for East Nashville, a market that I do a lot of business in. 2 more stories for you today, guys. I'm going to tell you about a strip club flip. Okay. In 2022, a buyer bought the former Pure Gold's Crazy Horse building. It was a building plus an adjacent parking lot. They paid $15.3 million for that property. They've since sold the building part, right? So the former Gold's Crazy Horse, Pure Gold's Crazy Horse. They sold that building. They flipped that thing for $2.5 million. They had originally planned a single-story retail building on the site, right? On the adjacent 0.74 acre parking lot, they had planned a 20-story tower, right? So why would you plan a single-story retail next to a 20-story tower, right? Well, I don't know with certainty, but I would bet that the parcel that included the building had different zoning than the parcel that had the parking lot. So the parking lot is much more valuable because you can build up 20 stories, whereas the building was limited to 1 story, was much less valuable, didn't work as part of the development plan. So they spun that off and flipped that for $2.5 million. Now they are selling the parking lot that is entitled for nearly 300,000 square feet of development. Entitled means it's already been approved at the municipal level, which is the big deal in the development business. The entitlements that you get for a property add an extreme amount of value, right? So now that parking lot of 0.74 acres, right, is being offered for $15 million. So 15 million plus 2.5 million. They're looking to get about 17.5 million for a property they paid 15.3 million for in 2022. The 0.74 acre lot sits along Interstate 40, wedged between downtown The Gulch and Wedgwood, Houston. The site offers around 32,575 square feet, making the asking price equivalent to around $460 per square foot of land. So we're talking about big prices here, but this land is entitled. Entitled land is worth more than land that is not entitled, right? So they have added some value as their time of the owners. But what I would tell you here, this is probably a plan B. I'm sure they went into that 2022 deal thinking they were going to develop that 20-story tower. Now we've gotten to a place where the banks just are killing us. Lenders have stopped lending. Lenders have stopped taking calculated risks. Lenders are sitting out our current economy, especially for ground up development. So reading between the lines here, it sure seems to me that they bought both the building and the parking lot knowing they were going to develop the parking lot, so they spun off the building for $2.5 million. As they got further into that development, got it entitled, they realized that financing and construction costs were going to make the property too difficult. They said, hey, we can make a few $1,000,000 if we just flip this entitled parking lot now, which is why they brought this property to the market. So this is a strip club flip from the perspective of the buyer and the decisions that one needs to make as you are going through the development process, which is very, very difficult, very, very costly, and very, very risky. So I would tell you that anybody that you know that's doing real ground up development has big balls, big courage, right? Very difficult thing to do. Very hard to sleep at night when you've got all of that risk out there that's going to come down on your head if you don't get that thing done right. And there's lots of things outside your control, right? So that's a difficult situation to be in where you've got a lot of capital at risk and it could all go away due to things outside your control. It's a scary situation to be in. This is how this seller navigated their strip club flip. And lastly, this will be short and sweet. A new restaurant is coming to the JW Marriott Hotel. Really, when I don't really care about restaurants. I'm not a foodie. I don't track restaurants. It doesn't interest me that much. We're going to cover this quickly, then I want to talk to you about the cost. A vinyl record restaurant, 888 Vinyl, will open in 5,203 square feet of space on the ground floor of the JW Marriott Nashville. A statement according to the restaurant's website, 888 Vinyl, Nashville's upcoming vinyl record-themed restaurant, is set to bring a harmonious blend of music and cuisine to Music City. JW Marriott, of course, already has other very nice restaurants. Bourbon Steak, which is on the 34th floor, which is a lovely place to eat. The Cumberland Bar, and also a breakfast and lunch spot known as Stomping Grounds are located on the lobby. Now, let me break this down for you. So this is a 5,203 square foot restaurant, right? It's the building exists. The space is in shell condition, right? All you need to do is build out the interior to your specific needs. The cost to build out the interior of this restaurant is $8.5 million. If you're doing math at home, that means the interior construction, the building already exists, it's white boxed. All you have to do is finish out the interior. $1,633 per square foot for this interior build out. That is madness. That is absolute madness. I don't understand how anyone would think it is a good idea to get into the restaurant business. And before you can even get open, right? The restaurant business is very, very difficult when you're open. But before you can even get open, you've got to get all your people hired, you've got payroll, and you've got a build out, which doesn't even include the equipment, the fixtures, right? Just the build out. $1,633 per square foot. You're going to have $8.5 million plus the cost of equipment, plus the cost of fixtures, plus that payroll. You're going to have $10 million in this restaurant before you sell a single meal. And of course, very difficult to run restaurants, right? The very thin margins, right? Your food costs are high. Your lease costs are high. Your payroll costs are high. Your insurance costs are high. I mean, your marketing costs are high. The list goes on and on and on. If you are starting at a negative $10 million hole before your restaurant even opens for business, golly, I don't know if that's a hole you ever get out of. And, again, I wish them well. I don't have a horse in this fight. But when I saw those numbers, I thought, wow, what a difficult challenge to take on. The very, very competitive restaurant business, notoriously thin margins, notoriously difficult hours, notoriously picky customers, and you're starting in a $10 million hole for 888 Vinyl. They probably say 888 Vinyl. So let's wish them luck as well, guys. And that is the final story of today's podcast. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in. I do my best to bring you stories that I think are interesting and insightful, and I can kind of put some behind the scenes detail on as a commercial real estate broker. So I hope we've discussed something that interests you. I hope you'll tune back in again next week. And let's keep an eye on the upcoming Civil War. I wish you all the best. Stay safe.